Hello. I just went to push record and I felt like a wave of nerves come over me, or like a little bit of anxiety. It's 1:10 on the clock. So I had a very rememberable, visually intense dream the other day. And I was going to actually like record about it sooner, but for some reason I did not. And the, I guess, main energetic strand or theme of this transmission is going to like break down some of the dream along with other let's say throughout like occult traditions and spiritual initiation tests, like trying to just maybe get a perspective on on some of this, because I've heard many perspectives and I'm not sure that I've personally tapped in a while. So yeah, I just wanted to see what came through. Of course, with these type of topics, there are many lenses and many views and many perspectives. So yeah, this is just an invitation for what comes through. And still honoring other perspectives as well. So 110. Yeah, 1, new beginning. 10, the karmic wheel of fortune, turning cycles. So I just did a little search particularly, so I'll hear like a specific phrase that I want to look up, and generally it will take me somewhere that I feel is like waiting to be researched, if you will. And I typed in occult views on spiritual initiation or tests. And like I said, I've tapped into this over time and different other people talking about this, books, dreams, etc. But yeah, this is just what I felt in the moment. So in occult traditions, spiritual initiation is a symbolic process of profound personal transformation, often involving ritualistic tests and ordeals. Rather than being mere formalities, these tests are designed to facilitate an inner awakening and prove a candidate's readiness for deeper mystical knowledge and higher states of consciousness. And then it goes into like the purpose of initiation and tests: transformation from profane to sacred, self-conquest and refinement, proof of worthiness, creation of a higher consciousness. And then there's like little bits about each one. So I just paused for a moment, and when I unpaused, the timer is 333. So you may be seeing threes, triangles, the word triad. Triadic template is coming through. So as I was reading some of the bullet points, I may go back to that as I weave through, but for now I'm going to sort of go into the dream that I had and any interpretations, as well as taking note that after I had this dream and was sort of letting it reveal itself a little bit over time, plus I had like other things going on and I did not have a moment to record in the energy that I wanted to. I saw a few other YouTubers or just people that also interpret these things post the same exact topic. So this is definitely like a collective thing going. And like I said, multiple perspectives, and each of us who receive it and then share it. Of course, that creates this like ripple effect, right? So I just wanted to keep that in mind. within like a day or two, I had seen this topic. So I also wanted to take note that before I get into the dream, there were a few different visuals that I was getting from like TV, movies, just to help sort of paint a picture, if you will. There's a show that I saw like when it first came out. I don't remember when it was, but it was a while ago. Upload, and I know that it's like a controversial topic, and I was surprised that I was drawn to watch it, to be honest. But if you're familiar, during one of the episodes, if you're not familiar, it's basically like a show where people can like upload their consciousness into like a digital afterlife, basically. Anyway, so the residents were going through like an upgrade or an upload. No, what is the word? Why can't I think of it? A reboot? Like all of them had to be sleeping at night so they could go through this, like, there's a specific word, but for some reason it's not coming to me. Upgrade, upload, update, like a reboot update. Anyway, the main character, his memories were sort of messed with, and so he doesn't have all of his memories, and he's working with one of the employees, they call them their angels, to get the memories back. So her idea was that he would actually stay awake for this upgrade, update, reboot, software update, reboot, upgrade, and hopefully retrieve some of the memories that were lost back. And so she like puts on her VR goggles to meet him in this digital space, to try to duck the other residents and employees so that they can like keep him awake. And the visual that the show chose to use almost looked as if it was like a version of I meant to say aurora lights, but I heard in my head neon lights. Interesting. The aurora borealis in a way, and but there were more colors, and it was moving through this digital landscape. If you're not familiar with this, and once these quote lights or light visual display passes over the resident, then they go through this upgrade or update. Now the symbolism here is so wild because if you've heard some of my other transmissions, I'm very into like understanding how our solar energy, like the sun, and even the sun's interdimensional and multidimensional aspects, and how the light streams in through different layers of dimensions, consciousness, and then what that means for us. And so it was just so interesting that the show is depicted that way, because some of you may have had these experiences, or maybe you will in the future, where there are emanations of light, whether you see the light through solar rays, like maybe you're in the sun and you look inside of a ray that's reflecting off something and you can see symbols basically scrying through sun rays. Perhaps some of you may have had experiences in dark rooms where you can see plasma fields or light coming through. So there's these different ways that we can connect into these plasma fields, and the way different consciousness streams are received in this realm anyway, in this dimension, this perspective of reality. I should say multidimensional perspective of reality. And something that came up recently was also in regards to like, some of you may be getting into or have been for a while, depending for each of you, like the idea of like Middle Earth or Inner Earth, Agartha, Shambhala, these different alleged civilizations, Telos, and how there are said to be these like physical emanations of these realities, but they're like also like overlaid with our own reality, and at different points of consciousness of the planet they kind of come together, and sometimes then there's this like perceived separation. Yeah, so a lot of these concepts were coming through. I will do an overflow Patreon for this, and I'm not exactly sure what I'm going to do yet. I'm sure I'll just sort of let it flow and see what comes through. Now, I did really want to be like very mindful with how clearing, with how I sort of present this, because if we're always like thinking about, oh, we're being tested all the time, like that can, speaking of like a little bit of anxiety, to like live that way can feel a bit overwhelming, so this is, I feel like you'll know that this is something, if you're still listening and you're interested, or you have some of these experiences, or even if they're not the exact ones that I named, but just the idea of being interested in some of these concepts, then it's something about like the balance of, simultaneously being the seeker and always wanting to understand, but also trusting like the mystery of life and the timing of things, and balancing out that experiential aspect of life in that way, I don't know, that may just be for a few of you if there's like a little bit of anxiety around that or something of that nature. And of course, each of these energetic strands that I'm bringing up have so many layers and there's so much nuance. So in this transmission, I'm doing my best to just allow the energy to come through organically, but know that there's so much more. That's why I have plenty of other transmissions on this channel that maybe go into some more detail of each one. And if anyone like wants to go deeper into a specific energetic strand that comes up, please feel free to like let me know, and I'm happy to try and do that. Okay, so the dream. So when I was a freelancer, if you're not familiar, for at least a decade. I was a freelance court stenographer, and I took it very seriously. I was very, very into work. I was slightly obsessed with work, if you want to say that. And so when I made the decision to cease that identity, that part of myself, let's just say some people in my life were very shocked, and some of them were not. They kind of thought I was losing my mind, if you want to go there, but in some form. Anyway, since I made this decision, which was in 2022, I'm recording this in 2025. I've had countless dreams about what it would feel like if I went back to this job, to this career. And I say this because it was a big part of the dream, and I will get into the collective themes as well as I continue to talk about this. So, like I said, I've had many, many dreams about this. And I've had offers in this reality where, my finances the last few years since I left have, let's just say, they took a very big hit, like a very big hit. And there's been so many times where I could have just gone back to that job, even just, quote, part-time. But something inside me just kept saying, like, no. And my dreams would, like, play out these different scenarios, like, even if I went back part-time and how I would feel. And, like, I've talked about different dreams that I've had over the time on this channel, so I'm not going to go into all the different dreams, but just know that has been a big part of this. And the dreams would often reflect like how I felt, in much more detail throughout the dream in different ways. And so just a little bit of background there. And each time I would get an offer in this, because I built up a lot of contacts throughout the 10 years. I was like really into networking. And so I was really honored. Like I would have people that I hadn't spoken to in a really long time, like message me like, hey, like, do you want to take this job, take this whatever, like take this assignment, like we really miss you. It was like honestly really nice, but at the same time it was like I couldn't go back through that door. Like I had already made this decision, and it was like, there were a lot of other reasons why I chose to leave that that field, and it was like going back would mean like I just would be in like two different worlds, and I just I'll get into that another time. So basically in this dream, it felt like all the other dreams were like leading up to this dream, if that makes sense. And this is definitely a collective energy. So I'm speaking in terms of like some of my own experiences, but please fill in like anything maybe for you that's coming up, whether it's job related, multiple areas of life, because it's not just career or like, but that's the way it's coming through the most. But it's definitely like highlighting, I'm seeing like a full zodiacal wheel, like all the different houses that represent different parts of us, so the whole wheel's highlighted, and then each of us will have different parts of that wheel at different times. Okay, so as I continue on, there were let's see. Okay, yeah, so in this dream, someone who I knew from my previous career, and I haven't seen in a very long time, we did the same job. And in the field of being a court reporter or stenographer, you need equipment to be able to do the job. So I sold my steno machine, and then you also had to have software on computer that all of this is like you had to like invest, like the software could be like a couple $1,000s. The machines could be anywhere from like, I don't know, a couple $100 to a couple $1,000s. So this was significant for the dream because, and in general, because like, even if I wanted to just quick, like, it's not just like, oh, I just take this quick job. Like you have to be like set up for it and have all the equipment. So in the dream, this person who, again, I haven't seen in a long time, really needed someone to cover for him. And he was like, can you please take this? We call them deps or deposition or whatever you were transcribing, like going to take verbatim a transcript. It could be in different settings, but he was like, please take this job. I really need help. And I really didn't want to in the dream, but I was like, okay, like I can just do one if you really, 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 really need help. And so I show up to the office in the dream where I'm supposed to be starting to, take the verbatim transcript. And I realized when I get there that I don't have any equipment. I don't have a steno machine. I don't have my software. And I was like, what am I doing? Like, I can't take this. Like, I don't have anything with me. Like, even if I wanted to take it, like I literally cannot do that. And dreams are weird like that. Sometimes where, like, sure, logically you should have remembered that, but there's obviously like a reason why it's coming through this way. And so I had to go to a different floor in the building to let someone know who scheduled that I literally could not take it, and that it was I wanted to apologize. I was like, I shouldn't have said yes. I just like really wanted to be there for this person. And it's like the logic just sort of left my brain, and, just kind of go to them in person and be like, my deepest apologies, because now you might lose a client. Like, I was like very aware of the repercussions. I just looked up what an office building in a dream could represent, just for maybe like another layer for someone of symbolism. And dreaming of an office building can represent your actual job or your general way of approaching tasks, responsibilities, and life. And then, of course, the context could depend, the office building, if it's familiar, if it's new, the condition of the building, etc. Okay, so now, as I was trying to get to, this feels significant, like whatever floor I was on when I realized that I didn't have my equipment. And by the way, that's not the first time I had a dream similar to that. And the other floor that I needed to get to was like way higher. Like it was like this building was like really, really tall, and I had to get like almost to the top of the building, if not to the top of the building, which of course in spiritual initiation, the idea of like ascension, the ladder, climbing the ladder, going up steps. You know, I've had so many dreams also depicting that similar imagery and symbology. Now, to get to this part of the building, it was taking me a minute. Like, it was a challenge to get there. For some reason, I couldn't just like hop in the elevator and get up there. There was like these like almost like little hoops that I had to go through just to get to this part of the building. So eventually, I finally get there, and I walk into the room, and there are multiple people. And this feels significant too. There were multiple people of like different nationalities and different races, gender, you know. And I walked up to this one woman, and I said to her, you know, like my voice is like trembling. I told her what happened. I apologized. I said, I take full responsibility. I don't know what I was thinking. I said, but I have to be honest with you. Like, I'm just so done with this, and I have to say no. I said, you know, I don't have the equipment, et cetera, et cetera. Now, this is the part that is funny to me. I remember when she listened to me, she heard me out. Honestly, the woman in the dream, I'm trying to like, there's a comedian, Wanda Sykes. She kind of looked like Wanda Sykes, or like had that like aura about her. She looked like her physically, but also like kind of had her aura a bit, but like in a serious, you know, setting. And she was like very serious, listening to me, you know, like letting me get out everything I needed to say. And then like right when I finished, she just gave me this like smirk, this smile, like as if she was like pretending to be this like serious person, but really she was not, you know. And then she said, "Congratulations, you passed the test." And I was like, what? The numbers 54 and then 157 felt significant, as if I was on floor 54 originally, and then I was like trying to get to floor 157. I don't know why those numbers came through, but we could look up, if someone wants to look up those numbers and like share something in the comments, like please feel free. I'm not going to at this moment because there's so much to interpret. But of course, 1s, 4s, 5s, 7s, each number numerically can also be trying to decode something for you. I just saw 222. So yeah, there's something that I wrote down. There were multiple, like I said, people of different races, nationalities, who were like escorting different floors. And then like, again, they all kind of came together in the room, and I looked around and I noticed like, oh, I saw maybe this person on this other floor that I was on, or trying to get to this floor, and I saw this person. And they told me, so once they told me I passed this test, they were like, okay, like, are you ready to hear now basically like what was really going on? And I was like, yeah. And I asked who they all were, like, well, who are you all? And they're like, you can think of us as floor angels. And I was like, floor angels? It was like each one had a designation to like a different floor as like an assistant to the person who was, you know, taking this spiritual initiation or test, if you will. And each like representative, it's funny because in that show Upload that I felt guided to watch, like I said, each resident has like a quote angel. And it's funny because like the angels like are actually just like people doing their job. So it's funny to look at it from both ways. But there was something that really stood out about like all the different nationalities and gender. It was like so many things, you know, like not judging a book by its cover. The idea of being angelic can come in many forms and different levels of consciousness and experiences, as well as like these parts of ourselves. How we have these layers and nuance, again, that's coming through. And when we look at like DNA re-encryption, it's like these, you know, it's funny because I was out the other night and I heard people, for some reason, like blood tests were coming up and like our lineages, and it wasn't a place I would expect. Like it just, there was nothing that like made sense of why we were talking about this. But, you know, we can be made up. Some of us are more pure blood. Some of us are more like a mutt, like a dog, you know, like we have all these different, I'm not calling a human a dog. What I'm saying is like we have these many different nationalities that can make up within a single human. And then if we get into like cosmic intelligences or the idea of our solar system, and then our, just like cosmic intelligences and seedings, that's a whole other thing. But, you know, we can be made up, especially from a DNA perspective, of our unique blueprint, right? That manifests through our physical vessel. And so, there were many layers to this. And then, of course, on another level, it was reminding me of the idea of like unity. Like we may come in different colors, forms, shapes, sizes, whatever, but there's still this like unifying interconnectedness that comes through. So there's that. Now, in terms of like how you can maybe connect to this on some level of being spiritually, quote, like initiated or entering into another or next octave of consciousness, there's this piece of like, where in your life maybe recently have you felt like you said no when normally would say yes, or you said yes when you would normally say no, or like obviously for me it was very connected to career. That was a big part for me, but there was again these other places in my life where it was showing up as well. Especially when you maybe don't know. It's like leaping into the unknown. Like I said no to these job offers in my dreams and in this reality when I did not have a backup. You know, it wasn't like, okay, well, I have all these other backups. It was like, no, from the outside world, looked like maybe I was in dire need of money, but there was still something inside me that knew I had to just follow my gut instinct. Not just my gut instinct, but also like, you know, I sat with this myself for it's like basically that internal, there was something that I just read that really said it well. 1 second. Okay, so transformation from profane to sacred. Occult initiation symbolizes the death of the old ignorant self. I don't love that word, to be honest, but ignorance just in terms of the way that I'm feeling the word ignorant is just not knowing any better, you know, like you just literally don't know until that awareness comes in. You simply just don't know. Self and the rebirth of a new enlightened individual. And of course the word enlightened has so much connotation around that. So from this context, I'll say, again, adding that awareness. And then once we have that awareness, making decisions to anchor in change, anchor in the internal compass and knowing. And then it goes on to say, this process is the spiritual equivalent of moving from the material world into a world of hidden knowledge and inner reality. Right? And then it's like concaving and convexing. We go through, you know, the inner, and then we bring it to the external and anchor in. And then we sort of go through this organic unfoldment and process that sometimes brings us inward, then outward, and then the integration of that, and so on and so forth. So, yeah. And another phrase that comes up all the time, and I'm sort of like not wanting to repeat myself, but sometimes when I feel something, we may need to go through it multiple times. You know that there's like a saying, what do you do before you, quote, reach enlightenment? I'm like, oh, I just had like a literal mind meld. Reach enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. And then you reach the top of the mountain and you become enlightened. And what do you do when you go down? You chop wood and carry water. So there's this idea of like, yeah, like honoring all of the experiences and the process, not just the test, if you will, or this initiation. I like the word initiation because, yeah, but then now, okay, so then there's a show that I often reference as well, The Good Place. And if you're familiar with The Good Place, there's like this, I don't want to spoil it for anyone, but they realize that the system from becoming human to the afterlife is not working. And so there's this idea they come up with to implement these tests, essentially like emotional tests, to see if the character or the, if you want to call it a lesson, the evolution of that character or personality, or whatever soul theme that was meant to be expanded on in that lifetime, is reached. And if you, quote, pass the test, then you move on. If not, there's other opportunities to take these tests, and they go through like some more learning and teaching to then be able to take the test again. So there's something really significant about that too, because it's like, obviously, if you're finding this, it feels like you just completed some sort of initiation. But don't worry, because if you found this and you feel like you haven't, like these opportunities come around, you know, and it's just like, how can you, of course, this is up to you. But I'm saying, like, if you want that opportunity again, it's just like, now, how do you, continue to add in the awareness? And yeah. Okay. Okay, this feels significant too. So one of the bullet points for the purpose of initiation and test was proof of worthiness. And it says, in ancient mystery schools and still in some modern traditions, tests prove the candidate is stable and mature enough to handle secret and potentially powerful knowledge without misusing it. So yeah, if you are listening to this, and this is not to say that anyone is like necessarily like better than anyone else, but there is this, I'm not getting an analogy at the moment. For some reason, usually I get so many analogies, but I just want to like sit with that for a second, because when these initiatory opportunities present themselves, know that there is some sort of like, kind of like a prerequisite, you know, like in certain colleges that you apply to, or like higher learning, there's like prereqs. Like in order to get into that sort of university or program, you may need prerequisites first to make sure that you're prepared. It's kind of sort of like that is what it's showing me. And once we then enter this university, and you may be having dreams also of universities, of higher learning, something like this. I know for years, off and on, I've been having dreams like that as well. And I'm also seeing wings of some sort. You may be having dreams of like wings or winged creatures, or just seeing a lot of symbolism in that arena. But there's, when I jump to the last bullet point, creation of a higher consciousness, it says the ultimate aim is to create a new refined consciousness. The ordeal acts as a crucible for a psychological and spiritual expansion, allowing the initiate to perceive and interact with the higher spiritual worlds. So we can also take that in many layers and nuances as well. But I just wanted to say that if you feel on some level, like if you're having some responses to this, or you've had your own dreams or signs, synchronicities, inner knowings, that this elevator to the higher floors, this climbing the ladder, the steps, and this is not to say that you're doing this for any sort of like reward or moral dessert, but there is this next octave integration of codes, memories, the etheric body often holding memories, right? It's like maybe some of you are getting memories back, just like in the show Upload. Like maybe you're starting to remember things that you forgot, whether it's from this lifetime, parallel experiences, etc. Different worlds, different realms. Some of you may have been going through this for a long time, and there's just like a culmination point to your physical reality starting to actually show up differently than it has been. You know, it may be different for each of you. Different gifts, talents, abilities, ESP, or like in some cultures, I know the cities, not like a city, but I'm probably saying that Siddhis. Now, it is said that you do not seek the cities. You know, it's sort of an effect of showing up and like that chop wood, carry water sort of thing. That's not to say we don't have like practices to hone in on our gifts and our skills. But yeah, it's something that, just like back to the idea of proof of worthiness, right? It's like once you reach a certain level of maturity with the integration of this comes maybe activation of the cities. And then I've talked about these before, but yeah, there's different abilities that are coming through. And I've been talking about the idea of telepathy for a while now, but it's been coming through really strongly the last like few weeks, I would say. Of course, the idea of accessing different, again, the Akasha realms, the CDT plates are coming through, and sort of different clairs that are maybe being activated. If you're already someone who's very like integrated with your clairs, again, integrated divination has been coming through for a while on my channel, as well as clear cartography, clear mapping. So integrating these tools like as our literal DNA codes are re-encrypting and like highlighting within our being and externalizing in some way. So yeah, it's like this, I know a lot of us who do these type of transmissions will use different analogies, and video games often come up to depict this, you know, like when we level up in a video game. And I'm not saying that our reality is like a video game exactly, but I'm trying to just give that and paint a picture of how our own tool belt, you know, our own human potential DNA awakening can show up for us. So yeah, it's pretty cool. Some of you may be having more memories come through your dreams. Like I remember at some point on this experience, I was really tired a lot after my dreams. And I was like, why am I so tired? And I was shown like all of these different realms that I was passing through, people that I knew in this life, other realms of creation, if you will, that I was like going to and visiting and like holding these like sessions to assist people. And at the time when that happened, I was like kind of like, what, am I making this up? But like it was so clear. And actually there was this one astral experience where, like I said, I was passing through these different realms, and there was like a version of myself, like I saw myself, and it was like I whispered to myself, like, okay, it's time to remember now. And then I like went through that process. It was like I was with these the cloud beings who were like they could like move around, and we were like friends, and they like bounced me from cloud to cloud. And I can't believe I'm sharing this right now, but I think I've talked about this in a different, maybe on my Patreon. And I had these like different meeting spaces for certain people. And again, not always just people, but beings. And then, yeah, it was like I whispered down to, okay, it's time to remember. So when I woke up, that was the first thing that I remembered. So some of you may be going through something similar and or already have, and this is just like a confirmation or a validation for you. Some people call it like getting your crown, being adorned. You know, there's so many ways that this can sort of come through. I just paused to look at my notes, and a fly literally just ran into my left eyebrow, like bounced off and buzzed. The name Sarah has been coming through so strongly for some reason, so that could be for someone. There's also the initials that come with that name. And or I remember at one point I kept hearing like these same three names. I think it was like Sarah, Rebecca. I know there was one more. And then I really one day felt guided to read this book. And within the book, the 3 names that I kept hearing on repeat were all in the book. So things like that can also be happening. But these names were really connected to the Essenes and like matriarchs throughout the Essene history. So that could also be relevant for someone, whether it's like literally the Essenes and or another tradition that may be sending you these little hints and clues to dive deeper. Now, when the fly hit my eyebrow, it reminded me of an angelic aspect that I asked to meet at some point, and I've talked about this before. And now when I feel that aspect coming through, she comes through as the Isla frequency for me. That's like the way it came in. I do tell more about this in other transmissions. I'm not going to go into like full detail, but there could be these crystalline embodiments of yourself that are communicating with you in ways. Yeah. Honey could be significant. I just realized that raw honey. Also, I just saw the number 40 on the timer. They say 40 is a very like important occult number, and there's a lot of mystery within that number. Yeah, so again, embracing the mystery is a huge part of this as well. Whales can be significant. There's an animal oracle deck I used to have, I believe by Toni Barron Reed. I hope I'm saying her name right. Or Colette Baron Reed. I always mess up every time I try to reference her because the actress Toni Collette always gets in my head. Okay. Excuse me. On the Animal Oracle deck, there's a card, the whale, trust a great mystery, and I was seeing that. And obviously there's so much about whales and the significance to their consciousness and what they do for our planet and how they're not really just on this earth, but they have a multidimensionality to them and how healing they are. So there could be some of these components that some of you may feel memories of whale consciousness. Some people say whales aren't even from this universe. You know, there's so much out there. I've tapped into things myself, but yeah, this is also just an invitation for you to continue connecting deeper as you allow things to unfold and see like what pings you as truth. Okay, well, I'm going to call it here and now take it to the Overflow Patreon. But yeah, if you got to this point, I just want to say congratulations, because there definitely feels like there has been this solidification of your next octave. And when I said that, I saw like a light flicker. So you could be seeing flickering lights. And or this may be coming in for you very soon. So yeah. Okay, thank you. Of course, as soon as I said that, my computer light went out. A little side note, you may be feeling like a deep rejuvenation process right now, a need for a little bit more rest. Like yesterday, I was so hungry. Like I just needed to eat like what I needed. And today I woke up not that hungry. So there could be also something about like trusting your body and what it needs at certain times. Yeah. You also could be seeing repeating 4s, but there's also something about protection as well as like stability and calling in this new form of stability and what that means for you. Also, I heard the word fragility, stability, the words fragility, stability, as well as integrity. And there's a 4th one that I feel coming in. Flexibility. Right? So it's like the metal structure in traditional Chinese medicine is coming through as like having, you know, built this new foundation on stability while also allowing for that flow, the water element, flexibility, a flexible structure. Yeah, that feels good. Okay, thank you.